Hello, happy Wednesday. We are halfway through the week. Yay. I am Ultimate Juror, or as everyone else just calls me, AJ, as George says. But George is never here anymore. Don't call me late to dinner. That's right, because I won't be there. Hello, Tracy Dane. Hope you are doing well today. Hope you're not getting too much of this bad weather that's going your way. Gabby says it's snowing. Hey, Gabby. Good morning. Uh, Flash fan, good to have you back. Hope you enjoyed your trip. Hope all your flights went smooth after you finally got on them. How's our favorite chur? It's been a morning, let me tell you. Uh, it has been a morning. I, Tracy will probably understand this. So my oldest Dane he's a male, and so we have two females. We have our younger Dane who's 3, and then we have Carmen's dog. And Carmen's dog's a German Shepherd, and she's young. She's about to turn 4, but she is full of it and full of herself a lot of the time. And Hank got a little upset with her today and got her ear. He always gets their ear. And if you've ever owned a dog, it's like when we cut our heads, it just will not stop bleeding. And of course, my vet is closed today. She probably needs stitches, so that's probably going to be my adventure tomorrow. Um, I've been, I was sitting in here getting stuff ready, and she came and laid down, which was fine. But then I looked behind me on this wall behind me, and it looked like a crime scene. She shook her head, and blood was everywhere, everywhere. And I didn't start off in these clothes today. I'm at one point I was trying to I will maybe do that because but I can't do it on my own, and I want to make sure it's clean before I do that. But I have her confined right now, so she just calms down and just will stay still to let that stop bleeding. But at one point, she shook. It was across my face. I'm like, it was on my monitors. It's probably on the ceiling. I haven't looked. She went into another room. I had her in there trying to get gauze and just something on her just to get it to stop. And I gave up. I gave up. I, I came back in here, looked at my desk. I'm like, oh my gosh, it is everywhere. It's everywhere. So that's what I will be doing when this is done. But then I laughed because I was like, how appropriate to wrap up H. Holmes that I had to clean up blood this morning from myself. I'm pretty sure I've got it all off of me. It may be in my hair, but you shouldn't be able to see that. I didn't have time to shower again. Like, I'll do it after I go clean everything up again. Um, but yeah, I just kind of had to laugh. Like, yeah, you've been such a jerk to try to get ready, and I'll be glad to finish with him today. But I'm pretty sure that was just whatever. He's just staring at me from my other monitor that I noticed I didn't get all of the blood off of. So I'm gonna have to finish that up too. I will try that if she'll let me. I mean, it is sliced. It is it's kind of hanging. It's kind of hanging. I'm really it's so bad. So bad. And her ears are so big. So I know. I know. I'm like, I even was like, "Are you getting a kick out of this, you jerk? Just, do you think it's fun? It's funny." So if you see anything, I think I got my walls clean, but if you see anything, that's what it is. I can't speak for everything. Flashman, I am glad that that your flights were good and that you have now conquered flying for the most part. You've at least done it. All right, let's finish up this dude, shall we? I just kind of want to punch him in the face right at the moment. If I could, I would. But, he'd be a ghost and I'd probably just go right through him. Anyway. Flashman, you didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, if you see anything, that's exactly what it is. It's decor for H.H. Holmes. Yes. I think I just want to like flick him in the nose or something while he's just staring. Well, Flashman, I am sorry. I'm not laughing at you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not laughing that you're crying, that you were crying, Flashman, because you were that scared. I feel really bad that you were that scared. But you made it. You made it. That's the important part. You did it. You did it. All right, let's finish this guy up. So, we left off with him. Where did we leave off? We got to his presumed victims and probably his known victims, which was like the little girl, Pearl Connor, her mom, who he was having an affair with, who may have had a botched medical procedure that he didn't, because he didn't want a child. There was another woman who maybe he did the same thing too. He liked the women. He liked to have them in his bed. Then they disappear because he apparently didn't want any children. Um, One thing I want to say real quick. This was it was a thing that I caught yesterday morning when I was looking at Gabby's um, Franklin B. Evans file. I noticed his victim's last name was Lovering, and Mr. Holmes' first wife's last name was Lovering, and they both lived in New Hampshire around the same time. So I was like, holy crap, would that not be something if they were related? They were not. I could not find anything on that said that they had anything in common relative wise or anything like that. It was just a weird coincidence that they both had the same last name. So that was a quick rabbit hole that I went down that was a short one and went to nowhere. But it was interesting. I was texting Gabby yesterday more like, holy crap, wouldn't that be something? But it was nothing. So we are going to talk about, and I did look up because I said his name wrong the other day, and I keep seeing it spelled differently, but I did find his Find a Grave site, and that had it spelled this way. So, whoops, just went clear to the end. Good for me. It's going to be that way. It's going to be that way. What are you doing? Oh my gosh. Give me 1 second. It didn't go clear to the end. It went clear to the beginning. It's been that kind of a day. It's been that kind of a day. It's me and tech, right? Here we go. All right. We are going to talk about Benjamin Pitazal. Thanks. Thanks, Gabby. Yes, good job. Me and tech. Should have been a lawyer. Yeah. The end. They lived happily ever after. Thanks, Tracy. You're shocked I'm streaming? Why? Because I shouldn't know how? All right. Benjamin Pettizel. I said Pietzel the other day. Sorry. So now he's going to come into the picture, and he's a great guy, just like Mr. Holmes. That's a picture of Benjamin Freelon Pitzel. Not a bad looking fella. He's having a good time, being his own self. And here's a picture of Benjamin in a Salvation Army uniform. Uh, this says that Benjamin Freelon Pitzel in his younger days posing in a Salvation Army uniform. That organization has no record of his membership at any time or place whatsoever. There is the credit to cabinet card, credit for Brownie's long lost images. Yeah. So I think he was a scammer. So he met up with H.H. Holmes, another scammer, and they became friends because birds of a feather. It's been an interesting day. It has been an interesting day. I had to stream. I had to stream. I couldn't let him win. He's not going another day. We're he's over today. He's just gonna cause me problems, I can tell. So good point, superstitious. Have some luck, AJ. I got it. I'm good. Thanks, Gabby. So H.H. Holmes met and became close friends with Benjamin Freelon Pitzel while working in the chemical bank. Chemical bank is now Chase Bank. Fun fact. No, Tracy, it does not come in threes. No. Pitzel, while working at Chemical Bank on Dearborn Street, the 38-year-old carpenter with a criminal past, shocking, was exhibiting in the same building a coal bin he had invented. Mr. Holmes used Pitzel as his right-hand man for several criminal schemes. Good for him. Oops, I missed correcting a spelling on one. A district attorney later described Mr. Pitzel as Holmes' tool or his creature. Good morning, Adair. How you doing? Hello, Christine. Hope you're doing well and not getting much snow. I think it's going to go north of us. Yeah, Zodiac will be like a month. With insurance companies pressing to prosecute Mr. Holmes for arson, and I'm not, if they're thinking that he set fire to his little castle thingy there, if that's the arson they're talking about, I've not been able to connect that. He left Chicago in July 1894, reappeared in Fort Worth, Texas, where he had inherited property from the Williams sisters. The Williams sisters, we will talk about, but yeah, inherited would be a nice way to put it. He once again attempted to build an incomplete structure without paying his suppliers and contractors because he paid no one anything. In July 1894, H.H. Holmes was arrested. It was only a couple city blocks, Gabby. It was not only 300 acres. H.H. Holmes was arrested and jailed for the first time on the charge of selling mortgaged goods in St. Louis, Missouri. While in jail, he struck up a conversation with a convicted outlaw, imagine that, named Marion Columbus Hedgepeth, a Wild West outlaw who was serving a 25-year sentence. Here is Marion Columbus Hedgepeth. He is, I guess, was a fine-looking man for back then. I don't know. But that's him. And here are his names. He was known as the Handsome Bandit, the Debonair Bandit, Derby Kid, and Montana Bandit. That's Jesse Jane's sisters. Sister, brother. We've had trials like that, Flashman. Brother, sister, brother, lover, mother. We didn't know. There's his death certificate, just in case you were interested in it. I should have put that further back down. We'll come back to it. Remind me. Paging Handsome Bandit. Paging Dr. Handsome. Mr. Holmes had concocted a plan to swindle an insurance company, shocking, out of $10,000 by taking out a policy on himself and then faking his death. Mr. Holmes promised Mr. Hedgepeth a $500 commission in exchange for the name of a lawyer who could be trusted. Mr. Holmes was directed to a young St. Louis attorney named Jephthah Howe. Mr. Howe thought Mr. Holmes's scheme was brilliant. Good for him. He must have been an upstanding attorney and agreed to play a part. Good for him. Nevertheless, Mr. Holmes's plan failed when the insurance company became suspicious and refused to pay. Mr. Holmes did not press the claim. Instead, he concocted a similar plan with Mr. Pitzel. Poor Mr. Pitzel. Benjamin Pitzel agreed to fake his own death so that his wife could collect the $10,000 life insurance policy, which was to be split with Mr. Holmes and Mr. Howe. The scheme was to take place in Philadelphia and called for Mr. Pitzel to set himself up as an inventor under the name B.F. Perry, and then be unalived and disfigured in a lab explosion. Can I say killed? I'm not sure. Mr. Holmes was to find an appropriate cadaver to play the role of Mr. Pitzel. However, on September 4th, 1894, Mr. Holmes unalived Mr. Pitzel. He didn't need a cadaver by knocking him unconscious with chloroform and setting his body on fire with the use of benzene. Friends till the end. It's ride or die. In his confession, Mr. Holmes implied that Mr. Pitzel was still alive after he used the chloroform on him and before he set him on fire. Forensics evidence presented at Mr. Holmes's trial showed chloroform had been administered after Mr. Pitzel's death, a fact the insurance company was unaware of, presumably to stage a self-deletion to exonerate Mr. Holmes should he be charged with unaliving Mr. Pitzel. I reread that. I didn't understand it. I think he was trying to say to set up a Mr. Pitzel self-deleted. I don't know how with chloroform. Whatever. It didn't work. In his confession, Mr. Holmes implied... Oops. Whoopsies. That's what happens to me. And I really spelled collected wrong. Mr. Holmes collected the insurance payout based on the genuine Mr. Pitzel's corpse. Don't read that part. And collected. Good heavens. I tell you, this thing has been a struggle. Mr. Holmes then went on to manipulate Mr. Pitzel's unsuspecting wife, Carrie Alice Canning, into allowing 3 of the 5 children to be placed into his custody. I don't understand why or how he did that. I can't find anything that said why he did that, but he did. So 3 children were placed in Mr. Holmes's care. They were 13-year-old Alice Pitzel, 9-year-old Nellie Pitzel, and 7-year-old Howard Robert Pitzel. It's too bad. H. Holmes and the 3 Pitzel children traveled throughout the northeastern United States and into Canada, while Mr. Holmes simultaneously escorted their mother, Mrs. Pitzel, along a parallel route. I don't know how he pulled this off. So he's moving around the country with 3 children and their mother, and they don't know that each other is moving around together. I don't understand how he pulled it off. Hats off to him, I guess. All while using various aliases and lying to Mrs. Pitzel concerning her husband's death. Mr. Holmes claimed Mr. Pitzel was hiding in London. Okay. Mr. Holmes was also lying to her about the true whereabouts of her 3 children. In Detroit, just before entering Canada, they were only separated by a few blocks, which is so sad. In an even more audacious move, Mr. Holmes was staying at another location with his current wife, Georgiana, who was unaware of everything. And good for her, also unaware that she wasn't ever really married to him because he never got divorced from Clara. So, Mr. Holmes later confessed to unaliving Alice and Nellie on October 25th, 1894, by forcing them into a large trunk and locking them inside. Mr. Holmes drilled a hole in the lid of the trunk and put one end of a hose through the hole, attaching the other end to a gas line to asphyxiate the girls. Mr. Holmes buried their nude body, why did they have to be naked, in the cellar of his rental house in Toronto. Nice fellow. There is Etta Alice. She went by Alice Pizzelle. She was, I think 13, 14. I've seen both ages. There she is. There's Nellie. That's like such a cute little girl. I mean, just sad. And there, enter Frank Geyer. So Frank Geyer was a Philadelphia Police Department detective assigned to investigate H.H. Holmes and find the 3 missing Pizzelle children. Detective Geyer began to trace Mr. Holmes's steps in June 1894 and found the decomposed bodies of the 2 Pizzelle girls in the cellar of the Toronto home. Detective Geyer wrote, "The deeper we dug, the more horrible the odor came, and when we reached the depth of 3 feet, we discovered what appeared to be the bone of the forearm of a human being." In Toronto, Detective Geyer discovered unsent letters written by the Pizzelle children that Mr. Holmes had kept. This led to further investigations of Mr. Holmes' Chicago property and ultimately led Detective Geyer to Indianapolis, where Mr. Holmes had rented a home in the Irvington neighborhood. Mr. Holmes was said to have visited a local pharmacy to purchase the drugs that he used to unalive Howard, which was the 3rd child, the youngest brother, on October 10th, 1894. Mr. Holmes also visited a repair shop to sharpen the knives he used to chop up the body. Good for him. Before he burned it, even better. The boy's teeth and bone were discovered in the Holmes chimney. And there's little Howard. Such a jerk. What else do you say? So sad. And the mom was blocks away from them. That's Detective Frank Geyer. Well, do you want your knife to be sharp? I guess. H.H. Holmes' unaliving spree finally ended when he was arrested in Boston on November 17th, 1894. Accused of attempting to defraud Fidelity Mutual Insurance, Mr. Holmes was tracked there from Philadelphia by the private Pinkerton National Detective Agency. They are still in business today. I think they were bought by a Swedish company. I'm not sure if they're still in the States, but they were a big deal. I don't think you wanted them to be on your tail. They're going to find you. Mr. Holmes was held on an outstanding warrant for horse theft in Texas. And we would think that would be a minor thing nowadays, but back then they'd hang you for that. The authorities had become more suspicious at this point, and Mr. Holmes appeared poised to flee the country in the company of his unsuspecting 3rd wife, Georgiana, who I'm wondering, did she just sit and stare out a window all day? Did she never wonder where he went, why he was going, what he was doing, who he was doing it with? She just seemed oblivious to everything. On November 20th, 1894, Carrie Pizzelle confessed to attempting to defraud Fidelity Mutual Insurance by faking her husband's death with the help of H.H. Holmes. She fears that Holmes has unalived her husband, and she'd be correct. There is Carrie Alice Canning. The picture on the right, where she's an older lady, she eventually remarried, and I can't remember when she passed away, but she ended up living a long life. I don't know how happy it was. She had her 3 children unalived by H.H. Holmes, and I think she lost another child I don't know why. Young, it just was on the Find a Grave site. And I know I reference that site a lot. There's just a ton of information on there if people actually have a spot. And I didn't really figure these guys would, but they did. So on July 15th, 1895, following the discovery of Alice and Nellie's bodies, Chicago police and reporters began investigating Mr. Holmes's building, now locally referred to as the Castle. Hey, Wolfram, how you doing? Mo Wade. Well, hello and welcome. We are talking about Mr. H. Holmes and his fun stuff he did. Yeah, we women, we're just stupid. We play on the beach, make dinner, and play with babies. That's all. That's all. He was a financial, and I'll have to edit yours, Adair. He was a financial unaliver and not a psycho. No, he was psycho. Definitely a psycho. On July 28, 1895, police discovered 2 graves in the basement of Mr. Holmes's castle. Though many sensational claims were made, no evidence was found which could have convicted Mr. Holmes in Chicago. Okay. You find 2 graves in his basement, but you can't convict him? Did somebody else just come in and bury him? I mean, I guess. There was only circumstantial evidence, or physical evidence of castle victims. A piece of human bones, possibly from Julia Connor, the remains of a child, her daughter, Pearl Connor, a burned gold watch and burned dress buttons, possibly belonging to Minnie Williams, those would be the Williams sisters, and a tuft of human hair, female hair, found in a chimney flue. I don't know, Adair, if he got the horse theft charge on him. They just were holding him on that, and I think they just held him because they had bigger fish to fry. Mr. Holmes would be tried for the unaliving of Benjamin Pitzel in Philadelphia, which had the clearest case for homicide, which we've seen things before where people unalive a lot of people, but they only get charged for 1 or 2. August 2nd, 1895, Patrick Quinlan, who constructed much of the Holmes' crime castle, turned state's evidence, as does his wife, who also worked for Mr. Holmes. We will read an article about him in a little bit. He was known as Mr. Holmes' janitor, and I think he was the cleanup crew. He was a different kind of janitor. I don't know if he actually stole a horse flash fan. It wouldn't surprise me. That's the charge they had on him, so they used it. In October 1895, H. Holmes was put on trial for the unaliving of Benjamin Pitzel. Mr. Holmes refuses a court-appointed lawyer and defends himself. Wish I could have found court transcripts. I could not find them. On November 2nd, 1895, H. Holmes was found guilty and sentenced to death. By then, it was evident Mr. Holmes had also unalived the 3 missing Pitzel children. He was not charged. The only death he was charged and convicted for was Mr. Pitzel. Following his conviction, H. Holmes confessed to 27 unaliving in Chicago, Indianapolis, and Toronto, and 6 attempted unalivings. Mr. Holmes was paid $7,500 by the Hearst newspapers in exchange for his confession. While writing his confessions, Mr. Holmes mentioned how drastically his facial appearance had changed since his imprisonment. Benjamin Button. On May 7th, 1896, H. Holmes was changed. He was not changed. I promise you that. He was hanged at, I had to look up how to say this, and I may be saying it wrong, Moya Mincing prison in Philadelphia for the unaliving of Benjamin Pitzel. Until the moment of his death, Mr. Holmes remained calm and amenable. I cannot say it. I'm just going to go past it. Showing very few signs of fear, anxiety, or depression. Despite this, he asked for his coffin to be contained in concrete, buried 10 feet deep, because he was concerned. He was concerned that grave robbers were going to come and steal his body and use it for dissection. The same crime that he did with his professor when he was in medical school at the University of Michigan. And he also sold cadavers of the people, possibly, allegedly, maybe, that he unalived. And he was worried that it was going to happen to him if it couldn't have happened to a more deserving person. Mr. Holmes's neck did not break, which I have found conflicting information on that, so I'm not sure. It says he instead strangled to death slowly. Sorry, twitching for over 15 minutes before being pronounced deceased. Sorry, not sorry. One article that I read said that wasn't true, that his neck did break when the door opened below him, and that he did twitch, but the coroner said that he wasn't alive. I'm going, I don't know. So there is the scene of the drawing of his execution getting ready to happen. I am like good riddance, Flash fan. I am all too happy to get this one done. So Moya mincing is Delaware languages for pigeon droppings. So they named their pigeon droppings prison. I thought that was hilarious. There is a picture of the prison. It is gone now. It is no more. I have some pictures of what it looked like inside. I don't know who that poor lady is walking right there, but she was going into the prison. There's the gate entrance to the prison. That is quite the door. It's kind of fascinating. I don't know if you guys are interested in any of this stuff, but I like to look at them. Those are just windows with bars on them. Pigeon prison sounds scary. Pigeon droppings prison sounds worse. There is a cell door. The door behind that, the black door, is a metal lattice door, and it looks really short to me. So I don't know what happened to people in there. I probably don't want to know what happened. There's just the cell block. There's more. It just looks like... So this was the debtor's apartment. So if you couldn't... Or yes, it was called the debtor's wing, the debtor's apartment. I think eventually it housed women. But if you couldn't pay your debts, there's where you went. So this is just where the prison was, that opened in 1835. The designer, Egyptian revival style, which you can see housed nearly 5,000 inmates, African Americans and women in separate wings. H. Holmes, considered America's first serial unaliver, was unalived here. The last hanging in Pennsylvania took place here in 1916, soon replaced by electrocution. Prison closed in 1963. It was torn down in 1968. So it is not there. After his execution, Mr. Holmes's body was interred in an unmarked grave at Holy Cross Cemetery in Eden. If I'm saying that wrong, I apologize. Pennsylvania. On New Year's Eve, 1909, Mr. Marion Hedgepeth, remember the handsome bandit who he had, hooked up with in his crimes, who had been pardoned for informing on Mr. Holmes, was pew-pewed and unalived by police officer Edward Jaburek during a holdup at a Chicago bar. There's a thing out there called the Holmes curse, and a lot of people who worked against him found kind of weird ends. So if it's true, but that's the problem with this, is finding out if things are true. On March 7th, 1914, the Chicago Tribune reported that with the death of Patrick Quinlan, that was his janitor, the former caretaker of the castle, the mysteries of the Holmes' castle would remain unexplained, and Mr. Quinlan would remain unexplained. Mr. Quinlan had committed self-deletion by taking strychnine, which I think every one of these that we have covered so far all involved strychnine in some fashion. I think this is the first time it has involved a person using it on themselves. It does not seem like it would be a pleasant way to go. And you can also, I was reading about, you could adjust it into your eyes, but it makes you go into convulsions. So, and that just doesn't sound pleasant. His body was found in his bedroom with a note that read, "I couldn't sleep." Patrick Quinlan's surviving relatives claimed he had been haunted for several months and was suffering from hallucinations. I think he was haunted for several years because I think it was 19 years after Mr. Holmes was done. This was a story about him because him and his wife turned on Mr. Holmes and testified against him. Biggest rat story. Pat Quinlan bought the champion rat story to town with him Saturday night. Oh, sorry. Ernest Miller, a lad who lives with the Quinlans, saw a number of rats around the barn on the Love Place. Oh, I don't even know. Okay, so they drowned some rats. I don't even know why this is here, why this was with Patrick Quinlan. Okay, so they're trapping rats. The next morning, he found the trap so full of rats that they could hardly move and counted 20 after they were drowned. Only 2 were small and the rest being full grown. He caught 34 rats. And I thought they were calling Mr. Quinlan a rat. Oh my gosh. There's Patrick Quinlan. And then I found these. They're supposed to be Patrick Quinlan and Mr. Holmes. I don't know. Don't they look fun? I don't want to go hang out with them. Yeah, they got something. His little pose in his chair. Oh, where he's seated just made me laugh. I'm like, why are you holding like a chicken wing? What are you doing? Here's his death certificate where it says, I couldn't get it any clearer, that this is strychnine poisoning, and I could not read what that said. I will not. I will not. I will not. I will not. I will not have a beer with him. So, Dill. Dill and Squishy. Yes, 1900s glamour shots. Oh my goodness. This has been just such a weird thing. The unaliving castle was damaged by fire in August 1895. 2 men were seen entering the back of the building at 9 p.m. About a half an hour later, they were seen exiting the building and running away. Following several explosions, the castle went up in flames. Investigators found a half-empty gas can under the back steps of the building. The building survived the fire but remained in use until it was torn down in 1938. Which you would think that if it survived the fire and it remained in use, that people would we would have better information on were there these secret rooms and were there doors that went nowhere and mazes and all this other stuff. The site is currently occupied by the Inglewood branch of the United States Postal Service, and I'm not sure that that's even true anymore. In 2017, after allegations that H.H. Holmes had escaped execution, Mr. Holmes' body was exhumed for testing, led by Janet Monge of the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology. Due to his coffin being contained in concrete, so they actually did it, his body was found to not have decomposed normally. Of course not. His clothes were almost perfectly preserved. and his mustache was found to be intact. I just keep waiting for it to. Have you seen the commercial where the guy's eyebrows, I can't think of his name, fly off his head? Because he does have really big eyebrows. That's what I keep thinking about when it was a Super Bowl commercial. But that's what Mr. Holmes' mustache looks like to me. Like it just should fly off. Um, the body was positively identified by his teeth as being that of H.H. Holmes, and then he was reburied. This is the second one that we've had where I don't know why they questioned that they thought he got away. I can see Belle Gunness, why they thought she got away. And we don't know. We still don't know if she did or not. We know he did not. Also, I guess his concrete worked. So, in summary, and then I have some newspaper things to look at. We know that what we know about H.H. Holmes is fraught with misinformation, sensationalism, yellow journalism, etc. It's hard to tell the truth from the lies. But facts I think it is safe to assume are true is he was born Herman Webster Mudgett on May 16th, 1861. He was hanged on May 7th, 1896. He was very smart. He had outstanding Super Bowl. I was reading Flash Fans chat. He had outstanding academic capabilities. He and his professor, William James Herdman, were grave robbers, while Mr. Holmes was enrolled in the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery. You know, back in the day, I guess your professor enticed you to go grave robbing, and today they do other things to students. He apprenticed under Nahum White, a noted advocate of human dissection, and ironically did not want to be dug up to be dissected. He was a criminal, and during his criminal career, he engaged in insurance fraud, forgery, and swindling. He was a bigamist. He was married at least 3 times, possibly 4. We don't know if he married one of the Williams sisters or not. It is said that he did, but I have no idea. There's not anything that says that actually happened that I have found. He was a horse thief and an unaliver. He claimed to have unalived 27 people, including some who were verifiably alive. He did unalive Ben Pitzel and his 3 children. He swindled the Williams sisters and then unalived them. He unalived Julia Smythe and her daughter Pearl Connor and Emmeline Sigrand in his unaliving castle. Emmeline Sigrand's skeleton was found in the home of a Chicago physician, so I guess he sold her as a cadaver or a skeleton, whatever he did that stuff. Things we cannot confirm. Was his castle was built with trap doors that opened into brick walls, soundproof rooms, etc.? Or are these... this is... So, I apologize if this is like kind of nuts. This is where I turned around and realized I had a crime scene behind me earlier today, and I did not have time to come back and proofread this, so it could be all messed up. Because I have a question mark there. So I apologize. Was his castle built with trapdoors, doors that opened into brick walls, soundproof rooms, and etc.? Or are these claims a result of yellow journalism and the lies that Holmes told the press? Because we know that he told a lot of lies to the press. He wanted to sensationalize everything. He obviously lied about the number of victims. He lied about... Well, he lied. If he could lie about it, he lied about it. That's... Hey, Sir Frank, how you doing? I guess he had to keep busy. No TV or internet. That was the issue. So we don't know how many people fell victims to H.H. Holmes. One is confirmed, Ben Pitzel. There are 9 suspected victims, but no one knows for sure, and we will never know for certain the number of actual victims. And this number I said is because this is what I got. I guess it's safe to say it's somewhere between 1 and 200. because that's what others have reported. I don't believe it's 200. I believe it is probably less than 30. But that's me. Because there is nothing else to say that 200, I'm not, that one I can't wrap my head around, um, because I just don't see that one. Let me grab these. So this article is when they discovered that, and it's probably going to be really blurry for you guys because it's blurry for me. The insurance company discovered that they were getting swindled. So it said he died for ducats. I don't know if I'm saying that right. So this was November 18th. I'm going to have to look at it over here. And they have his name wrong. They says R.H. Holmes. It says, by the arrest of H.H. Holmes, alias Howard, in Boston, a gigantic swindling scheme has been unearthed by detectives of the Fidelity Mutual Life Insurance Association of the city. On September 3rd last, the corpse of a man was found at 1316 Callow Hill Street in this city and was buried by the coroner under the name H.J. Pitzel, which, again, I think is the wrong name because I think he was BF. I don't, but it wasn't that. Anyway, now it appears that the corpse was a bold substitute for the purpose of defrauding the insurance company of $10,000. Attorney Howe of St. Louis appeared in Philadelphia accompanied by a young girl. So Attorney Howe was the one that the Mr. Hedgepeth, the handsome bandit, that was the attorney that he said he trusted and that Mr. Holmes went to help them with their scheme. So he's back here. And now he's accompanied by a young girl whom he represented as a daughter of Benjamin Pitzel. So I would say it was one of his daughters. It was decided by the insurance company to exhume the body, which was done by officials of the company. The officials were satisfied and the body was reburied, and Attorney Howe received $10,000, representing the sum due to Mrs. Pitzel. So they got him. A month ago, one of the company's agents, while in St. Louis, became cognizant of some of the facts and formulated the story of the conspiracy. He discovered Holmes and Howe had been related in the character of lawyer and client in a case where Holmes had been arrested under the name H.M. Howard for obtaining goods under false pretenses. Then it was found that Holmes and Pitzel had been in business together in Chicago during the World's Fair, where they conducted a hotel with secret rooms in which they hid goods obtained by swindling merchants. We did read that he did have rooms to hide furniture in. So that makes sense. The place was called the World's Fair Hotel. While here, Pitzel took out a policy with the Fidelity Company, and Holmes followed his example a month later, both giving notes for the first payment. Holmes was chased all over the country. It was learned that Pitzel and Holmes obtained, by some means or other, a corpse from the New York hospital, brought it here to Philadelphia, surrounded it by evidence of the incidents of death in the Callow Hill Street house, and obtained $10,000. Holmes was arrested in Boston by detectives who are now after the other conspirator. Well, good luck finding him because he wasn't alive. He wasn't alive. you you fall between 50 and 75 victims. Yeah, I'm not sure. There. I'll put down Sir Frank. I don't know. Thanks, Gabby. I'm one in a million. It's I'm not a better researcher, Flashman. You don't have to pay. Yeah, Gabby can tell you. I look in the Library of Congress a lot. Um, I did not know the best way to get a hold of old newspapers are libraries. Like if you need Denver Post or Rocky Mountain newspapers, the Denver Library has digital library of all the newspapers ever printed. Nice. So that was on November 19th, 1894. This one is November 21st, 1894. So this one is Los Angeles. This one was Montana, Anaconda, Montana. Never heard of it. Huh. It's a strange name for a town in Montana. So this one actually goes into a lot. This one has a lot to say. So this is the Associated Press wrote this. So they've been around a while. The arch conspirator, H. Holmes, accompanied by Mrs. Pittazel and a pretty woman who calls herself Mrs. Holmes, I guess that's Georgiana, the one that has no clue what's going on, arrived in the city today in the custody of Detective Crawford and Special Agent Perry of Fidelity Mutual Life Association. Mrs. Pittazel's 16-year-old daughter, Meta, and her 1-year-old boy were also with the party. Mrs. Holmes, Georgiana, disappeared soon after her arrival, and no clue to her whereabouts could be obtained, probably because she didn't know where she was. She's just like, I'm just around here somewhere. I'm on the beach. Leave me alone. It is thought she was stopping at a hotel in the neighborhood of police headquarters. After the arrival, the party was closeted with Superintendent of Police Landon until late in the afternoon. When the conference was over, Detective Crawford detailed the story of the trip, the most important feature of which was the relation by Mr. Holmes of the story of his whole life. It read like the most sensational of romances. I bet it did. He liked to embellish. Holmes sat beside the detective with handcuffs on. The train had scarcely emerged from the Boston depot before he tried to bribe his captor. H. Holmes offered the detective $500 if he would allow him to escape. He said he had frequently hypnotized persons, having acquired the art from a college professor in the West. He said he could get the money from his wife or Mrs. Pittazel. When he saw his words had no effect, he entered into general conversation and told the story of his life. He said he was raised in Burlington, Vermont, and was so well educated in the schools that at 15 he was a teacher. For some time afterward, he went to college there and later in Detroit, Michigan. Here he formed the acquaintance of a medical student who, he said, furnished the body in New York in the present case. He refused to divulge his name. During vacations, they worked on farms to raise their college expenses, but one summer they found themselves without means, and then the medical man suggested the idea of getting a body and beating an insurance company. This was 12 years ago. The doctor got his life insured for $12,000. They obtained a body in Chicago, took it east, arranged the details of identification, and successfully got the money with which they continued their studies. He refused to name the company, thus swindled. They worked the scheme afterwards with success, obtaining sums ranging from $10,000 to $20,000. Once Holmes got his life insured for $20,000, he then went to a hotel in Rhode Island. At that time, he wore a beard. He secured a corpse in Chicago, cut off the head, and took the body to a lonely spot not far from the hotel. Then shaved off his beard, returned to the hotel, asked for Holmes, and engaged a room to wait for him. He had brought the head with him and burned it beyond recognition in the fireplace of the hotel. This scheme, however, fell through. The mother of his wife, when she discovered the scheme, threatening to tell the police, and Holmes fled to the West. Resuming his story, he said that while living in Chicago about 18 months ago, he fell in with a typewriter girl, okay, and furnished a house on the outskirts where they lived together. A younger sister came to visit them, so this is the Williams sisters, I guess. And the woman grew so jealous of her that in a quarrel one day, she struck her over the head with a stool and unalived her. To save the woman with whom he lived, Holmes said he put the body in a trunk loaded with stones and sunk it in the lake. This girl had property in Texas, and he and Pitzel took off her hands and sent her abroad. What? Oh, took it off her hands. Better read that one right. It was worth, he said, $40,000. And after getting it in their hands, they went through Texas buying carloads of horses on notes on this property. But as they never had legal title to the property, the notes were worthless, and it is, for this affair, they are wanted in Fort Worth. So, yep, I'd say they stole horses. To save this property, Holmes said he and Pitzel formed a scheme of swindling the Fidelity Company. He told the detective that for the crimes he had committed, he deserved to be hanged a dozen times. Well, you kind of almost were. Holmes is not lacking for money, as he himself admitted that at the present time he is supporting nearly 24 persons, including the girl unaliveress, her mother, and an imbecile brother. Two orphans in Chicago who live in one of his properties, 3 separate alleged wives and their children, and his own mother and father in Kankakee. He would not give the names of the women. He firmly maintained that Pitzel is alive and in San Salvador, thought he was in London, and that he will hear from him through the personal column of a certain newspaper. Mr. Perry said that as a result of the interview, it had been decided to arrest a number of other persons whose names were not ready to be given out. Mr. Perry related in detail the story of Holmes' arrest in Boston and the manner of which Mrs. Pitzel was decoyed from Burlington. He said that in the secret conference today, nothing had been said that would in the slightest degree refute his original theory that Pitzel had been unalived. When in the West, he saw the parents of Mrs. Pitzel, and they told him their daughter had complained of the exorbitant fee charged by the St. Louis lawyer, $2,500. That's Mr. Howe, that guy. In corroboration of his unalive theory, Mr. Perry said that he had from Miss Pitzel an exact description of her husband, agreeing in every respect. Now I gotta get back to the top. Sorry. With every respect, that with that of the corpse found in the Callow Hill Street homes. So, what did she just say right there? Whatever. Mrs. Pitzel, he continued, was perfectly innocent of any complicity in the whole affair. Was she? She told Perry last night that she had received only $5,000 in cash. She said Holmes had taken $5,000 of the money and put it in a speculation in Fort Worth at which Pitzel was also interested. Holmes told Perry that this was true. In Texas, Perry said Holmes operated under the name of H. Pratt. He added that Pitzel and B.T. Lyman are one and the same man. So Mrs. Pitzel's kind of get off, sounds like here. Miss Carrie Pitzel, it is claimed, has made a full confession of the alleged insurance swindle. It is stated that she has implicated Holmes, at whose suggestion it is claimed she went to Burlington, Vermont. She stated that Holmes substituted, some of these are blurry, the alleged bogus body for that of her husband and collected the insurance, but she was kept in ignorance of the whereabouts of her husband, who disappeared at once. Since the affair, she has been roaming from place to place, prompted by Holmes, in search of her husband, and it was through the hope that she would be sent to him that she answered the telegram of the detectives. Now she fears that the body for which the insurance was paid was not a bogus one, but that of her husband, and she would be correct. Mrs. Pitzel also fears that her daughter Alice, who was the only one besides Holmes to identify the body, has been spirited away, unfortunately, as she has completely disappeared from home, and Holmes is the last one known to have seen her. Holmes asserts he left Alice and the other Pitzel children at their father's home in Detroit a month ago, and since then has heard nothing from him. Holmes further stated that when he came to Boston on Tuesday last, he intended to take passage for Berlin, but changed his mind, and before he could perfect other plans, the detectives had him. Okay. So then we have the story of the Williams sisters here. It says Holmes victims, good reason to believe he unalived the Williams sisters, Fort Worth, Texas, November 20th. There is every reason to believe that, now they got C.H. Holmes, who went by the name of O.C. Pratt in Fort Worth, is guilty of unaliving Minnie R. Williams and her sister Anne, who I think went by Nanny. The crime was probably committed in Chicago, and in this crime, a man who claimed here to be a citizen of Chicago and called himself Benton T. Lyman is an accomplice. Sometime in February, he came here from Chicago and placed on the record a deed from one bond to Lyman for 100 feet front on Rusk and 2nd Streets. Bond got title by deed from Minnie R. Williams, executed before a notary, who was H.H. Holmes, whose name was said to be Holmes. On this property, Lyman began an erection of a 3-story building. Lyman had sold one lot to Fort Worth citizen who was fearing the title was clouded and began to investigate. He found that Minnie R. Williams wrote late in 1893 to her sister, Miss Ann Williams of Midlothian, Texas, to come to Chicago, that she was going to be married and go to Europe. The sister left for Chicago. No word ever came from either sister. Minnie R. Williams, by will, was left half a block of property in the heart of Fort Worth, valued at $60,000, and a farm valued at $15,000. This property has been alienated ostensibly by Miss Williams. A detective has recently been sent to find the girls, but no trace can be discovered. And I don't think they ever found them. So this one is Mr. Hedgepeth's sentence before he was pardoned, I'm going to assume. Jefferson City, Missouri, November 20th. The Supreme Court today sentenced Marion Hedgepeth, the handsome bandit, to 25 years imprisonment. In the spring of 1892, he was a train robber too. He was several others robbed the Frisco Express car in St. Louis County of nearly $17,000 and $3,000 worth of valuables. Only a small portion of the plunder was ever recovered. That's what he and his gang did. Hedgepeth, it will be remembered, started a saloon in Los Angeles soon after the Express robbery. He was detected and arrested in San Francisco and extradited to Missouri. Further notoriety attaches to Hedgepeth from the fact that it was he who furnished the information leading to the expose of the Pitzel insurance swindle. And now they can't find his lawyer. Late last night, an effort was made to see J.D. Howe and get his statement in regard to the Hedgepeth expose, but he was not at home, and he could not be found. Alphonse Howe, his brother, reluctantly gave the information that he had left the city soon after being released on bail, but refused to tell where he had gone. He's out of here. That's all I can tell you. He's gone. Gone. Left, ran away, or was unalived. Now they have found, this is November 22nd. So we have November 19th, November 21st, November 22nd as they are unraveling this insurance scheme, swindle, whatever you want to call it. I guess you guys might want to see it. I don't know. The Pitzel mystery deepens as the days roll by. Seen in Chicago less than 2 weeks ago, Swindler's Holmes' trail of crimes. He was often in Indianapolis, a third woman victim, discovered. Is this an Indianapolis paper? No, it's a Los Angeles paper. The Pitzel mystery deepens as time wears on. Today, many theories in regard to the mysteries were knocked in the head. Phrasing. They should not say that, as people were probably knocked in the head by announcement that B.F. Pitzel, the supposed unalived man, was seen in Chicago less than 2 weeks ago. President Fowles? I know Gabby's going to be like, Fond of the Fidelity Life Insurance Company said today, this morning, my Chicago representatives telegraphed me that a Mr. Bryan, who is a businessman in Chicago, called on him and said that B.F. Pitzel was in that city less than 2 weeks ago. Yes, it did almost get me, Flashman. It did. I stopped, though. I stopped. I stopped. It almost got me. Got me quicker than that. Mr. Bryan says he has known Pitzel for many years and had frequent business transactions with him. And it is impossible for him to be mistaken. When they met, Bryan did not know Pitzel was supposed to be dead. And the two greeted each other cordially, whatever, and repaired to a nearby saloon where they had a drink together. These words. Then they separated, and Bryant says he does not know whether Pitzel was to remain in the city or not. However, our men there think the Pinkerton detectives, which don't mess with them, have taken up the clue, CLEW. And it is my opinion that Pitzel will be produced within a few days. President Fowles called on Mrs. Pitzel and her daughter at the Central Station today and received valuable information from the daughter in reference to her father. The daughter said she remembered while walking with her father one Sunday in Chicago that latter said to her, if you ever hear through the newspapers or any other way that I have been found dead, do not believe it. I will be all right. So that's what Mr. Ben Pitzel supposedly told his daughter. Later on, while in Boston, she read the story of her father's death in a newspaper. As soon as she had finished the story, Holmes said to her, do you remember what your father told you the afternoon you were walking in Chicago? During Mr. Fowles' interview with the daughter, Mrs. Pitzel grew excited and exclaimed, they have all deceived me, even my own daughter. Mrs. Pitzel said she remembered receiving a letter from her daughter Alice in which she related her experience while coming east for the purpose of identifying her father's body. Alice stated that Howe and Holmes accompanied her and both were sociable with each other on the trip west, east, whatever. This sets at rest the claim of Howe that he never met Holmes until introduced to him by President Fowles on his arrival in the city. So then we go to Indianapolis. It developed here today that H. Howard, the insurance swindler, known as Holmes and Mudgett, has been here often. On September 24th, he brought a young girl with him whose name he wrote on the register of the hotel as Etta Pitzel, of St. Louis. Howard explained to the clerk that she was the daughter of an old friend of his who had just died, and he was taking her home. The clerk said he believed he had seen her on the street since the time she was supposed to have left. She was about 13 years old. That would have been Alice. Lawyer Albert W. Wishart, which made me kind of wonder if Wishart Hospital in Indianapolis was named after that guy. It's not that name anymore. It's Eskenazi. Whatever. Fun fact. Was instructed by telegraph from Philadelphia to file suits for the recovery of money obtained by H.M. Howard, now under arrest at Boston, part of which is on deposit in a bank in this city. The title of the complaint filed is the Fidelity Mutual Life Association against H.H. Howard, alias H.M. Holmes, alias Herman Mudgett, and Georgiana Howard, who has no idea what's going on and doesn't know where she is half the time. Maybe. The plaintiff alleges that he is engaged in the business of life insurance and that he be issued a policy on the life of B.F. Pitzel for $10,000 and that by a mistake on the part of the plaintiff and deception of fraudulent representation on the part of the defendant, the said Howard received the sum of $10,000. That afterward, the plaintiffs discovered that B.F. Pitzel was still alive. Proofs of the claims were spurious and fraudulent and made for the express purpose of cheating the plaintiff out of insurance money. That the defendant fled the country, turning over and paying to his co-defendant, Georgiana Howard, a large portion of the $10,000, which the defendants deposited in the bank in the city. Maybe that's where she took off. So this talks about Kate Durkee, who he is, sorry, my stomach is growling and my throat is dry, who he was accused or claimed he unalived. She wasn't, she was fine. So following close on the story of a mysterious disappearance of the Williams sisters at the hands of Holmes, the life insurance swindler comes a third woman victim, namely Miss Kate Durkee. Miss Durkee had property, and that's pretty much all she needed in his eyes. Documents representing the property came into the hands of H.H. Holmes by theft. The woman mysteriously disappeared, and Holmes showed title to the property. Miss Durkee was not Miss Williams. She had dark eyes and hair, while Miss Williams was a blonde. A year ago today, 25 creditors of H.H. Holmes met at the office of George B. Chamberlain and made a desperate effort to find out who and where Miss Durkee was. It was supposed she was an accomplice of Holmes. That property illegally obtained was being transferred to her name. The creditors wished to reach it. Suddenly, Kate Durkee dropped entirely from sight, like the Williams sisters, and left no trace behind. I believe she was unalived, said Chamberlain today. I believe also. Durkee turkey. Uh-oh. There we go. It'd be nice if they didn't make these so long. So he believes that Miss Durkee was unalived and that both Williams girls were unalived. He's right about 2 out of 3. Mr. Chamberlain, as a proprietor of Lafayette Mercantile Agency, began an investigation of Holmes a year ago. But Miss Durkee was found. Miss Durkee has not been unalived. She's been found in Omaha. A dispatch from that city tonight says Miss Kate Durkee lives here in this city with her brother, who is assistant auditor of the Burlington Railroad. She expressed surprise when asked concerning her connection with Holmes' family in Chicago. She never heard of but one wife. She recently visited Mrs. Holmes and made Holmes transfer a piece of property in Chicago for her. She refused to explain what property this was, but declared that Holmes' lawyer was familiar with the deal. I'm wondering which wife she met. Maybe Georgiana, because she's like, hello, I don't know where I am. Attorney Duncombe of the city said, Holmes employed me to attend to some business for him, and in the course of the action for which I was retained, it became necessary to take the deposition of Miss Kate Durkee. In her evidence, she said she was related to the wife of Holmes. I'm going to say no. Mr. Duncombe said he had frequently seen Pitzel in company with Holmes and that he would know whether the corpse in question was the body of Pitzel if he saw it. Well, they weren't singing much, Gabby. The 1950s music group. They were singing in the dirt or the fire. I'm not sure. B.F. Pitzel, who is the central figure in the Philadelphia insurance swindle for which offense H. Holmes is under arrest, is a former resident of the city of St. Joseph, Missouri, and left there about 3 years ago under a cloud. He was under a cloud. All right, I'm going to skip to. Oh, is this where he talks? Oh, this is where he's talking about. This is where the girls were found. The Davis sisters, or the basement. That's where everybody ends up, in the basement of the unaliving castle. Lost my cursor. So on this is when the bodies of the girls were found. July 15th, the bodies of Etta, Alice. So they've got 3 people listed here, but there was only 2 daughters. This is why it's so hard to find, to make sure that you have concrete, well, you have evidence, like it's good, the facts are good, because they have it wrong here. Etta, Alice. So Etta, Alice was one person, but they have a comma in between there. She went by Alice. And Hetty Pitzel, the missing daughters of Benjamin Pitzel, were found by Detective Cuddy of Toronto and Detective Geyer of Philadelphia today, buried in the cellar of the house. I didn't realize that he just got to go be a detective wherever he wanted to be a detective. Canada, Boston, Philadelphia. Like, you just go do what you want to do. I think that goes onto ships down there. Nope. It didn't. Sorry. H. Holmes is now under arrest at Philadelphia, is believed to have deliberately murdered, unalived their father in Philadelphia and their brother in Detroit. The inquiries began by police today and led to the knowledge that Holmes and the children lived in the house in question. A search was made by the 2 officers. A photograph of Holmes was shown to Frank N. Nudell of the Ontario Educational Department, who owns number 16 St. Vincent Street, and without hesitation, he identified it as the man who had rented the house from him last October and after a very short stay departed. When they reached the cellar, it appeared that to the detectives that something had disturbed the cellar floor, and arming themselves with shovels, they began to dig. A short distance below the surface, they came across the arm and a portion of the head of one of the girls, and further work soon revealed the bodies of all the victims. It should only been 2. They were nude and apparently had lain there since last October. When Detective Inspector Stark was communicated with and gave instructions that the bodies be removed, and they were taken to Humphrey's undertaking establishment on Yonge Street, Coroner Orr was informed of the ghastly discovery and called an inquest to be held at the police headquarters tomorrow night. It is understood that the jury will meet pro forma, and after viewing the bodies, will adjourn for 1 week to enable the Crown authorities to work up evidence. Okay. The bodies of the little ones were buried 3 feet from the surface and were in a fair state of preservation. Holmes, the alleged unaliver of the girls, is held in Philadelphia on a charge of conspiracy, and a nice legal point now presents itself. The unalives have been committed in Canada. The accused must be tried within its boundaries, but as Holmes has pleaded guilty to 1 charge in the United States, he may insist on being sentenced for that. H. Holmes, alias Harwam? I thought it was Herman, but okay. W. Mudgett, alias H. Howard, was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and attended a medical school in Burlington, Vermont, and later at Ann Arbor, Michigan. He was married at the latter place He and a friend swindled an insurance company in Chicago out of $12,000 after graduating. They made another haul of $10,000 in a similar way. Holmes went into the drug business and speculated. His wife went home and he married another woman with whom he went to California. Returning about a year ago, he went to housekeeping with another woman, the typewriter woman, of the company whose acquaintance he had formed. He tried to cheat a fire insurance company out of $60,000 but failed, and learning that his typewriter and her sister had inherited $50,000, lady schemed to get the money. The sisters came to live with them and suddenly disappeared, while he and Minnie, the typewriter girl, took up their abode at the Plaza Hotel in Chicago. I don't think so. Holmes next appeared in Terre Haute, where he bailed Petitzel out of jail. From there, he went to Franklin, Indiana, which is a really small town. I wonder why he went there, where he married Miss Yoke, and they spent their honeymoon in Denver, where Mr. Holmes made $27,000 in speculation. I don't know what that means. At Philadelphia later on, he and Petitzel played the last card. Petitzel. I don't know how you make money in speculation. I don't know what that means. Is it like the stock market? In the Philadelphia Mutual for $10,000. That's what Petitzel was insured for. On September 3rd, he was found unalive in the house at 1360 Callow Hill Street. Hey, Debbie, how you doing? Well, that's what you think it is? A pyramid scheme? Hello, Debbie. Again. Maybe you declare your speculation and then write someone a bill. I'm going to speculate that there's a lot of misinformation about this whole entire thing. Here's my bill. My bill is paid in full today for this guy. After everything, it's paid today. On September 3rd, he was found unalived in the house at 1360 Callow Hill Street, which he had rented under the name B.F. Perry. His body was badly burned and the face was almost unrecognizable. Holmes and Petitzel's wife's children identified the body as Petitzel's, and $7,500 of the insurance was paid over. It was insurance fraud? I believe it. That makes sense. Then trained robber, Hedgepeth, Mr. Handsome Bandit, gave the whole case away to Chief of Police Harrison because lawyer Howe, whom he had got into the conspiracy, had not paid him the promised reward. How can you bring your attorney in because you can trust on a deal that you know is against the law, and then you wonder why you can't trust your lawyer? Duh. Holmes was traced to Toronto, Burlington, and Boston, and in the latter city was arrested. Meanwhile, the Petitzel children had disappeared, the boy being traced to Indianapolis and 2 girls to Toronto. Holmes awaits sentence in Philadelphia for insurance fraud, and the police expect to fix several unalivings on him. Doctors who have examined the bodies agree with Detective, I think that's Geyer's theory that the girls were unalived by hypodermic injections of morphine. Holmes is known to be an expert user of injections. First time hearing that, and let's hope maybe that wasn't the worst way to go with what we've heard some other ones going. Like because he said he put him in a trunk that had a hole in it and then hooked gas up to him and suffocated him. So I hope maybe it was some morphine. With the finding of the bodies of the Petitzel children in Toronto, a chapter in this history of one of the most sensational criminal cases in the annals of this country is being closed, and the net of the law is being drawn more closely about one of the boldest scoundrels who have ever been arraigned at the bar of justice. Herman Mudgett, alias H. Holmes, is in the county prison here awaiting sentence to the confessed charge of conspiracy in defrauding the Fidelity Life Association of Philadelphia out of $10,000 by palming off upon it a bogus body as that of Benjamin F. Pitzel, a policyholder of the company. The case exceeds in interest the most sensational novel ever written and has so many sides to it that it is difficult to even outline it in an ordinary length of a newspaper dispatch. I would agree. I don't think he knew Jolly Jane, but he was active when Belle Gunness was doing her stuff. They could have made some insurance money together. In July 1889, the Fidelity Life Insurance issued a policy for $10,000 upon the life of Benjamin Pitzel. Shortly after this, a man giving the name of B.A. Perry rented a house at 1319 Callowhill Street in the city. In September of the same year, a fire, shown to have been caused by an explosion, occurred at the house, and the charred body of Perry was found. A short time after this, Jephthah B. Howe, the attorney from St. Louis, presented a claim to the Fidelity Company for $10,000 on the life of Pitzel, alleging that the man found in the house of 1319 Callowhill was Pitzel. With Howe were Alice, the 13-year-old daughter of Pitzel, and Holmes, the arch conspirator in the case. The body of the supposed Perry had been buried in the potter's field, but was exhumed, and Alice and Holmes positively identified it of that of Pitzel. The money was paid to Howe, and the party returned to St. Louis. Mrs. Pitzel was in St. Louis at this time, and through the representation of Holmes that she could aid her husband in furthering his interest, had consented to become a party to Holmes's schemes to deceive the insurance company by passing upon it a bogus body as that of Pitzel. Holmes told her that he and Pitzel had procured a corpse in New York and had it up in the house at 1319 Callowhill Street, and that this was the body found. Miss Pitzel believed the story and, to aid her husband, consented to take part in the deception. The insurance company, suspicious and setting detectives up on Holmes' track, built up a case against him. And in November last year, Holmes was arrested. We know all that. And let's see. We know that he did bad things to the children. So this one makes me laugh because the day, Flash fan, listen to me. The day, July 27th, is my birthday. I was not born or alive in 1895. I promise you that I was not alive then. I don't want to repeat. I don't want to talk about Pitzel anymore. I want to talk about, all right, this is back in his castle. His castle. Pictures are it didn't happen. I was not having dinner on the Mayflower. I wasn't a spark in anybody's eye on July 27th in 1895. I don't care what you've heard. Oh, good. We get this word. More conclusive evidence than has heretofore been collected by police in the Holmes case was revealed by the investigation tonight. Inspector Fitzpatrick believes it to be certain that at least 3 unalivings were committed in the castle of Holmes, and through witnesses that were found today, it is believed Holmes can now be convicted of unaliving in the city, but he never was. And he was never charged. Yes, it was way before the 1800s. The police have found a man whose name they refuse to divulge, but who was brought to the office of the inspector this afternoon by Lieutenant Thomas and Officer Foley. I'm wondering if that is not Ben, um, Patrick Quinlan. I wonder if that's who they were talking about there. He told police that he had mounted 3 skeletons for Holmes and that the skeletons were from bodies taken from the house of Holmes on 63rd Street. Or could be Chapel, because he's the one that found one of the skeletons. One of these, he said, was the body of a man, and the other 2 were women. They were taken from a dark room in Holmes's house in the nighttime, and the 2 of the mounted skeletons were returned to Holmes. The flesh of the bodies had not been stripped from the bones when the bodies were given to the new witness, but the faces were so badly lacerated and torn that identification would have been impossible. Oh, I think we read this. The police also found an expressman today who was able to give what the police think is important information. The name of the expressman is Charles Humphrey, and in the month of June 1893, he was hired by Holmes to deliver a box and a trunk at the Union Depot in the city. The box, according to Humphrey, was taken from a dark room and had the appearance of a coffin box. This was expressed to Philadelphia, while the trunk was set in another direction. Give me 1 second. Where's my cursor? So I think we read this because this is where he had put them on the table stretched out and was defleshing them, whatever that's called. And then he couldn't, so he chopped their arms off. And then the guy took the arms. I think we read this the other day. It was kind of bad. All right, the story of the man who mounted skeletons. Gross. The story of the man who mounted the skeletons is to the effect that in June 1893, he was sent for by Holmes, who at the time was going under the alias of Gordon, and asked if he would articulate the skeleton of a man whose body was in the possession of Holmes. He accepted the job, and by the direction of Holmes, he called at the house on the stipulated night, and it was taken by Holmes to a room which would have been dark even in the daytime. Stretched out on the table in the middle of the room was a body of a man. The skin was entirely removed from the face, but all other respects it was in good condition. Gross. The articulator in Holmes had some talk as to the best way of getting the body out of the house, as Holmes said he did not want the neighbors to see it removed. It was finally agreed that the articulator would cut off the arms and that Holmes would provide for the removal of the rest of the corpse. This was done, and the articulator left the house carrying the arms with him in a sack. He had just reached his house and was preparing to go to bed. You know, just a couple arms in the sack sitting on the table. Gonna go to bed. When he was called uh, to the front door by a loud knocking, he went down and found Holmes and another man there. They had the balance of the body, which had been cut into 2 more pieces after the articulator left the house. Holmes left after remarking that he would have have he would have come on, Paige. That's what you wanted to do? Oh, these papers. There we went. There's all these ships on here, and I don't know what they're talking about. He would have another job for the man in a short time. True to his word, in December, he sent for the articulator for a second time, and on the arrival of the latter at the house of Holmes, he was taken to the same dark room where, on the same table where the body of the man had been laying on the occasion of his former visit, was the body of a young woman. The face of this corpse had been disfigured in such a manner that it was impossible to tell what she had looked like when she was alive. The story of the expressman is to... I need to go back up. Oh my gosh, I got to clean my monitor off. Yeah, it's got the appropriate spatter on it for this story, but I need to clean it off. I wiped it off, but it's smeared. To the effect that he was hired by Holmes one afternoon and told not to come to the house until after nightfall. When the expressman kept his appointment, and he was given a box and a trunk by Holmes and told to take them to the Union Depot. When he was putting the box into the wagon, he turned it on end and was at once stopped by Holmes, who told him that he was on no account to keep the box in any other position except flat on the side. The orders were to take the trunk and the box to the depot and leave them on the platform. He was told that they would be taken care of. He saw only one man at the depot who seemed to be interested in the trunk and the box. After Humphrey had told his story to the police tonight, Patrick Quinlan was brought up from his cell and the two were placed face to face. The police will not tell why this was done, but the general opinion is that it was done because Humphrey recognized Quinlan as the man at the depot. The expressman will be retained in custody as a witness. Oh, yeah, I have not, Tracy, I've not, knock on wood, I have not had that happen. My youngest Dane is very aware of her tail, and Hank, I think he's just gotten lucky. I've only had ears. Ears just go everywhere because I imagine it's like the tail. It's just like, it, I'm trying not to get gross. I did not want it to create a crime scene. I did not. So we got two bodies at his home. Now we've got Patrick Quinlan. Patrick Quinlan saw a lot. I think Patrick Quinlan saw a lot and never told, unfortunately. I think he probably knew a lot of information about what happened there, about who went missing there, and just never said anything. So we've got two bodies. This third one, I think they're thinking maybe was Emmeline. Oh, I thought they said they never found the sisters. This says, buried in quicklime. In prosecuting the investigation of the basement of the big brick house on 63rd Street today, the workmen employed by the police came upon two graves. The indication are that in the graves were laid the bodies of Minnie and Annie Williams. Lime and quicklime had accomplished their work, and their bodies had turned to native dust. But there still remains sufficient evidence to make the identification possible. Two soft spots in a bed of hard clay were the size of human bodies, and where the heads would have been were mats of long hair. One big strand was of light color, like that of Annie, while the other was of brown hue of Minnie's hair. Ew. Yeah, I'm glad that I have not had to deal with a tail. I have heard horror stories about them hurting their tails. The catch it. It's fine, Flashman. I don't. It is what it is. It is. I told it at the beginning, so it doesn't matter. It's fun having pets, but thank you. The juxtaposition of the mats of hair would indicate that the bodies had been laid side by side, the heads but a few inches apart. 12 men worked with picks and shovels in the rear basement of the castle today. They were divided into two squads. One squad worked under the tin shop, and the other attacked the dirt bottom of the cellar near the rear and west walls. It was close to the partition between the rear and front cellars under the stairs leading from the tin shop that early in the afternoon the two masses of quicklime were found. The bones and the masses of hair were found in them. A long wooden shallow vat was found 2 feet under the ground. It was expected that when cleared out, evidences that a human body had been buried there would be found, but the examination resulted in nothing of the kind. Either it was a blind sewer or a secret repository. He he did a dare. He was convicted of one crime, which was the one that kept reading about the insurance fraud of Ben Pettizel, because he was supposed to find a body to replace Ben so they could get the money, but he ended up just unaliving Ben and getting the money, and then unaliving all of Ben's children, getting nothing for that. But yeah, he was hanged for that crime, and that was the only one he was ever convicted of. I don't. Canada wanted him to go on trial for the unaliving of the two daughters, but I don't. He never went there because he was hanged, so couldn't go. He was. So a letter to Pat. So this Patrick Quinlan is the guy that I'm telling you knew everything. The police have found a letter from Holmes to Pat Quinlan, to which much importance is attached. The letter is as follows. Dear Pat, among other fool theories, they think you took the Pettizel. Gotta go back up to the top. Sorry. Or back down to the bottom. He ghosted Canada. Poor Canada. They think you took the Pettizel boy to Michigan and either left him there or put him out of the way. I have always told them that I never asked you to do anything illegal. Probably not true. But they are bullheaded. October 13th, I saw you at the factory, I think. Can't you show where you were all the rest of the month? If they question you or threaten to arrest you, tell them anything there is to tell about this or any other matters. They want to know if you were in Cincinnati or in Indianapolis about October 12th. It is well for you to be able to know where you were working. I am awfully sorry, Pat, for I have always tried to make things easy for you. When Minnie unalived her sister, I needed you the worst way, but would not drag you into it. If the detectives would go to this paper article has been the worst. To New York, as I want them to, they would find where Minnie W. took them by boat. I have done no unaliving, Pat. One by one, they are finding them alive. Minnie Williams will not come here as long as there is any danger of her being arrested. She can't come there because she's not alive. A Boston man knows where she is, and her guardian, Mossy H. Watt, will go to her. Let your wife write me anything you wish. Not oftener than 2 times a month. Directing H. Holmes, County Prison, 10th and Reed Streets, Philadelphia. I cannot write many letters to you. I am doing all I can for all. Expect to hear shortly from you. Give my love to your wife and Cora. Tell her I have her picture in my room with me and I thank her for it. Tell her I have a tame mouse and a spider to keep me company. My food is the worst part here. Clarence Phillips restaurant, poor stuff would be fine compared with it. I only eat once a day. Shall be put out of it sooner than you expect. They kept Mrs. P shut up here for 6 months, and when we would have let her out on bail, made a fool of her, right soon and free. Ask any questions you want to. Georgiana is visiting her mother. Went about 2 weeks ago. With regard to all. HHH. Pencil mem. If you see Tfed, tell him I am much obliged to him. I have no idea what that means. TFED, Tfed. It's like a gangsta name. Okay, so Mrs. Patrick here, again, July 27th, my birthday, but not 1895. Yes, the food in that era in jail, you really got gross stuff. I don't know that you get good stuff now. Depends on the jail. Not that I know. I don't know. I've just heard. It's code for the Fed. Okay. Miss Patrick Quinlan lost her defiant spirit in the police inquisition. So they weren't talking. Patrick Quinlan and whatever his wife's name was were not talking to police. 2 days, sweatbox experience proved more than she could bear. Really, I'm not even going to try to say that word. And she told the police things which before had not been acknowledged. Huh. Chief of Police Badenoch said evidence secured from Mrs. Quinlan is highly important. She confessed to abetting Holmes and insurance swindles, and that is a step in the right direction. Patrick Quinlan, her husband, continues to protest he was a mere hireling and does not know Holmes' affairs at all. Mrs. Quinlan's evidence was that after Mrs. Connor's disappearance, it became necessary for Holmes to produce her to collect some insurance. Mrs. Quinlan consented to act in her place. She went to the insurance office and swore she was Mrs. Connor and signed that name. According to the statements of Jonathan Belmont, it was Christmas night, 4 years and 6 months ago, that Mrs. Connor was unalived. He believed she was I cannot talk anymore, suffocated, in her room while she slept. Her room was a small one adjoining the dark bathroom in the castle. When all was still in the house, Holmes switched on the gas. So I do believe that I don't know about the other stuff. I do believe that he had the rooms that he could do that in, that he could gas people, because there was more than one time that we heard about people getting gassed, for lack of a better word. When the deed was accomplished, Holmes stealthily admitted himself through the secret door of the bathroom, lifted the inanimate form of Mrs. Connor from the bed, and carried it into the bathroom. Then, placing the body in the bathtub, he proceeded he dismembered her and fed them to the hot fire in the stove. Gosh. When all was done, he took the ashes and parts of the body that had not been entirely burned and buried them in lime in the cellar. Okay. The police believe the chain of evidence against Pat Quinlan now complete, and Holmes' ex-janitor will be tried for unaliving here. And I don't believe that he was. And also, so now they're going to try to tie a brother of the Williams sisters to H.H. Holmes. I never saw this anywhere else except for this little short article right here. So I don't know, because we don't know. William Capps, the Fort Worth, Texas attorney, who is here in behalf of the heirs of the Williams sisters, advanced a rather startling theory today, which, if found to be true, will add another victim to the long list of unalive people already credited to Holmes. According to Capps, Minnie Williams had a brother named Horace Williams in Denver, Colorado. This young man was either unalived or disappeared in May or June 1893, shortly before the supposed unaliving of the Williams sisters. The manner of his death is not known to the attorney, but he says he has ascertained that the young man was insured for $2,500 in favor of his sister Minnie. The fact that Mr. Capps considers to be decidedly peculiar, as he says it is not reasonable to suppose Horace Williams would insure his life in favor of a sister who was already wealthy. Why not? he said that his investigations upon this point were in an uncompleted state, but from what he had learned, he was of the opinion that Holmes had first insured the young man and then been instrumental in causing his unaliving. Now, this headline right here. Times have changed. Times have changed. That's all I will say. The mom did not want her daughter to marry a German person. Whatever. I can't. This one is, I'll put this one in Discord because it's hard to read. I know, rude. um, so and plus it's really long. But this talks about when the Quinlans turned state's evidence on Holmes, and there's just some things in there. But it's like I said, it's really hard to read. So for me, I will put it in Discord, and you guys can read it there. And then this one is. Talks about Holmes being his own lawyer. I don't know that he maintained being his own lawyer throughout. I was thinking there was a time like he was able to do some of it, but then he did hire uh, an attorney to. We don't need to read the story of arrest, but then he did hire an attorney to get him through the rest of the trial. It didn't matter. It really didn't matter. He stood no chance. He did it. He admits to doing things, and then he says, I didn't do things. He doesn't know. I wanted to make sure that I got the one. I'm not sure what's happening right there. Climbing the flag. I said flag. Pole. Western League pennant. Oh, it's baseball. These two had a little thing going on, a little divorce happening. All right, I think that's it. There was one in there that must not. Oh, here it is. It's when Patrick Quinlan self-deleted. So there's Patrick Quinlan. I guess that's supposed to be H.H. Holmes. There's the castle. But he says that there were memories of trapdoors, secret elevators, and the stove. So I don't know. I'm not sure. But I'll put that in Discord as well. And you guys can read if you want to. Read you a lot. It's probably getting boring. And my voice is going away. But anyway, so yeah, that's Patrick Quinlan. How animals and birds sleep. Well, not like Patrick, not with strychnine. But yeah, that's him. So we'll put that in there as well. That's not a castle. Hey, it has a turret or whatever that's called up there. Trapdoor secret passages. Yeah, they went right to the furnace, apparently. They were. The artwork was really cool, but that just doesn't seem to be an accurate. If that's supposed to be H.H. Holmes on that one, I don't think that's what's accurate. A fez. I know. I never pictured him wearing a fez. And boy, does he look angry. And he's got a full, well, I guess there was talk. You don't know what voice going away is. Try reading as a dude for 45 minutes. If I keep reading, I'm going to sound like a dude. But thank you, Flashman, for reading in your woman voice. It was awesome, and we expect it again very soon. Gabby's found some transcripts. I'm excited. I'm super excited. An eraser haircut. Just turn him over. Oh my goodness. I'm probably gonna I just it's like, okay, after today, I'm not mentioning this guy again. I have went through so much trying to get this together of just stupid, weird things happening. And for those of you that missed the beginning of the stream, before I was up here trying to finish getting things together today, and my two of my dogs had kind of had a little squabble this morning, and one of my dogs is just perfect at getting ears, and he got my daughter's German Shepherd that lives here, her ear really good. I didn't realize as I was sitting here getting stuff ready, I thought she was just laying down beside me over here, but she wasn't. And then I realized she had shook her head and her ear was bleeding again, and it looked like a crime scene behind me. And she shook her head and it went across my face. I was just like, this is perfect for trying to get H.H. Holmes stuff together because it's been super hard. I've had a lot of weird stuff happen to me trying to get his story together, and it's done. It's over. I don't have court transcripts. I know they're out there because I saw somebody else. I saw a YouTube channel that did them a while ago, but obviously I can't just steal their channel because that would be rude. And I'm not going to do that. I don't do that. But yeah, so we're done with H.H. Holmes forever. Bye-bye. Sayonara. Glad you had to go to a prison that was named Pigeon Droppings. Thanks, Gabby. Yeah, he is done. Done, done, done. Thanks, Flashman. I appreciate it. So anyway, all those newspaper articles, I will put those in Discord. The pictures, whatever I have, I'll put in there. I did find a picture of his first wife, Claire, but I didn't have time to get it and put it in the Canva thing that I did, but it wouldn't have made sense to put it in there anyway because we weren't talking about her anymore. H.H. Holmes is my skelly man. I don't want that. I just want it to go away. You're going to go to sleep now? I figured you were going to go eat. Guess you already ate. Isn't it like time for lunch? You had your pre-lunch. Now it's lunch. Then you'll have your post-lunch. You already did that, see? I'm sorry. It was hard for me to watch chat. Plus, you guys, I don't know what you were talking about earlier. All right. I am going to. All right, here we go. I'm going to send you guys back to Mo because she was very nice. You had syrup bread. I don't even know what that is. Pancakes? I was not ignoring you. You were talking about something different and I was getting confused. But I wasn't ignoring you. I promise. All right, we'll be back Friday for Valentine's Day. And I think we will just do whatever. It's Valentine's Day. You just had bread with pancake syrup on it. You could have made French toast, like Tracy said. You too, Adair. I don't know if you're getting any of the storm. We're like in a little pocket. It's going to go right below us and right over the top of us. So I'm okay. I'm good with that. Good. Goodbye, Miss Debbie. Love you too, Gabby. You want to thank Gabby for the snowstorm coming? It's not my fault this time. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. All right, guys. Sending you to Mo in the deep end. She's doing a trial right now. I think it's that baby trial in Tennessee. They don't know. But I'll see you guys off Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Adair time, 10 a.m. I got myself confused. Sir Frank Otter time, and 1 p.m. Tracy Dane time. And I don't, if you're out in California on that coast, that's your time. Tonight, 9. I got it. All right. See ya.